Chapter 11. All week, Nikolai worried about what would happen on Sabbath morning. He knew he shouldn't worry, but he dreaded what might be coming next. He thought he would be willing to take more of the same treatment he had already received, but his wounds hadn't healed yet from the warden's initial horsewhipping. If he was whipped again, the wounds would just open up again, and he could only imagine what the pain would be like then. By Friday night, though, his faith was strong, and he was determined to stand for God and face whatever was in store for him tomorrow. If God would give him the courage and the strength to go on, Nikolai was determined to be faithful to God, no matter what happened. Sabbath dawned cool and clear. Nikolai did not know how early he had awakened. He didn't have a watch, but he could tell by the snoring in the barracks that it was early, well before the usual time to rise. Because of the lacerations and bruises on his back, Nikolai had been sleeping on his stomach, but now he rolled out of bed and onto his knees. "Please, Lord," he prayed, "let me be worthy of the persecution that might come my way today. I know it's a small thing compared to what you did for me, but I'll gladly do it." How long he stayed on his knees he couldn't say, but suddenly Yuri's gravelly voice was waking everyone in the barracks as though it were the judgment day. "On your feet, men! Out of those beds!" Yuri gave a few of the beds a jarring kick, sending prisoners flying out of them in a hurry. Nikolai jumped to his feet too, but not before Yuri noticed him. "Well now, Panchuk, it's nice to see that we're not going to have any foolishness this morning. I can see that you've come to your senses." Nikolai smiled weakly, but said nothing. He knew trouble was already on its way, but what should he say? No matter what he said, the whole thing was going to blow up in his face. All the soldiers filed out into the morning sunshine and waited their orders after roll call. The officer in charge of camp, maintenance, and repairs read down through a list of the tasks for the day. Several of the prisoners in Nikolai's barracks were to work with a crew that would be helping to butcher some reindeer meat brought in the day before. The dozen or so animals had somehow split off from a larger herd and migrated west toward the camp, where the guards spotted them through field glasses. Other prisoners were sent to cut new sod to build yet another barracks that was soon to go up. It had been rumored that another batch of prisoners would be coming in the next month, and the current barracks were already bursting to overflowing. "And Panchuk," Yuri looked straight at Nikolai, "you are to report to Vadim immediately after breakfast. He needs to do some roof repairs on the mess hall." Nikolai looked straight ahead. The moment he feared almost had arrived. And, of course, he wasn't surprised. Would the confrontations and the beatings start all over again? "Well, what are you waiting for?" Yuri demanded as Nikolai looked straight ahead and didn't offer to move. He opened his mouth to speak, but then closed it again. What was the use? They were going to mistreat him anyway, no matter what he said. But then he remembered his promise to God that he would speak for the Lord wherever he was sent, or in whatever he was asked to do. Nikolai took a deep breath. "I can't work today because it's the seventh-day Sabbath of the Lord my God." The guard's face took a shocked look of exasperation, but then turned to annoyance. "Preacher man, you have got to be kidding," he blurted. The other prisoners stared at Nikolai and shook their heads silently. Yuri finally overcame his silence and snorted. "So you've decided to be stupid again, have you? Well, we'll see about that." He grabbed Nikolai by the arm and marched him off to the warden's office. and then left him standing in the hallway just outside the imposing doorway. Nikolai finally dredged up enough courage to knock on the door. Maybe the warden wasn't in, Nikolai hoped. Maybe he was busy doing something more important. But soon the door opened, and when the warden saw Nikolai, a look of disbelief came across his face. "What do you want, Panchak?" He shook his head pathetically. "Don't tell me you've decided to be stubborn again." The warden came right to the point. It was as if he had somehow known all along that Nikolai would refuse to work again come Saturday, but had never really allowed himself to imagine it. Nikolai opened his mouth to speak, but the warden cut him off. "All right, if that's the way you want it, come with me." He stood to his feet, stepped through the open doorway, and then down the short hallway. Nikolai stood rooted to the spot as he watched the warden go.